Hi everyone. Book summary: Don't Believe Everything You Think by Joseph Nguyen. Let's enjoy the video. Please subscribing to my channel for more great content like this. You'll be notified when I upload new videos. Don't Believe Everything You Think is a guide to overcoming anxiety, self-doubt, and self-sabotage. The book rejects feel-good clichés about motivation and willpower, and draws on timeless Buddhist wisdom to demonstrate how thinking entangles us in a life of suffering, and how we can free ourselves from that trap. The book explains the root cause of suffering, the difference between thoughts and thinking, the three principles of mind, consciousness and thought, how to stop thinking and live in the present, how to access intuition and inner wisdom, and how to create from a state of unconditional love and joy. Real examples from the book. 1. Once we become aware of the fact that we are only feeling what we're thinking and that thinking is the root cause of our unpleasant experience, we see it for what it truly is. 2. Then we allow it to settle by giving it space, and slowly we will see how we begin to have a clear mind again. 3. Nguyen delves deeper into distorted thought processes and examines traditional cognitive distortions that seriously impair rational thought. 4. He highlights fallacies such as binary thinking, oversimplifying, emotive reasoning, and overstretching. 5. Through a combination of mindfulness practices, cognitive behavioral techniques, and real-life examples, Nguyen helps readers develop healthier thought patterns and cultivate greater self-awareness. Introduction. This book can help you find everything you've been looking for and the answers to the questions you've always had. The author wants this book to change you. He argues that change is the only constant, so it would be impossible to read this book and not change as a result. Whether you pursue peace, love, fulfillment, or joy, you can find it. You can use this book to get practical results like a better income, business growth, improved relationships, addiction recovery, getting rid of unhealthy habits, and better health. The point of this book isn't to achieve external rewards, but internal ones. To get the answers you're looking for, don't try to find information, try to find insight. The difference is that information is external, but insight lies within you. This book is a guide to get there. The absolute truth lies in feelings, not in facts. Chapter 1. The Journey to Finding the Root Cause of Suffering. In the opening chapter, Nguyen presents the idea that our thoughts and beliefs are often deceptive, leading to dissatisfaction and suffering. By recognizing the fallibility of our thinking and questioning our assumptions, we can begin the process of liberation from the constraints of our own minds. He introduces the concept of self and its impact on our thoughts and emotions. He distinguishes between the ego, which is often driven by fear and desire, and the true self, which is rooted in awareness and compassion. Examples from this chapter. 1. Nguyen describes how mental heuristics, such as confirmation bias and emotional thinking, lead us to make incorrect inferences. 2. He explains how even highly intelligent people can fall victim to these cognitive distortions. 3. Nguyen encourages readers to investigate the truth behind their thoughts and embrace the transformative power of self-inquiry. 4. He emphasizes the importance of cultivating mindfulness and being fully present in the moment. 5. Nguyen offers strategies to detach from the grip of the ego, fostering greater authenticity and peace of mind. Chapter 2. The Root Cause of All Suffering. The concept that our thoughts, not reality, shape our experiences. He emphasizes that our perceptions of the world are unique to us and can differ vastly from those of others. Nguyen uses the example of sitting in a coffee shop. While one person might be stressed about their life, another person in the same coffee shop might be peacefully enjoying their drink. This illustrates that our experiences of the world are shaped by our thoughts and perceptions, not by the objective reality. He further illustrates this point by suggesting that if you ask 100 different people what money means to them, you would get close to 100 different answers. This is because money, like any other concept, is interpreted through our individual thoughts and perceptions. Nguyen argues that our feelings do not come from external events, but from our own thinking about these events. Therefore, we can only ever feel what we are thinking. This is why two different people can have completely different experiences of the same job. It's not the job itself that determines how they feel about it, but how they think about the job. Nguyen concludes the chapter by stating that the root cause of our suffering is our own thinking. He suggests that by changing our thinking, we can change our feelings and thus our experience of life. Nguyen uses the example of a person who hates their job. This person feels stressed and anxious whenever they think about their job, even when they're not at work. He suggests a thought experiment. Who would you be without the thought that you hated your job? Without this thought, you would likely feel happy, peaceful, free, and light. Nguyen shares a Zen story about a young monk who gets angry when someone disturbs his meditation. The elder monk asks him, "Do you know what is really making you angry?" The young monk realizes that it's not the disturbance that's making him angry, but his own thinking about the disturbance. Nguyen discusses how our thinking can create a perception of reality that feels unchangeable. However, if we understand that our feelings come from our thinking, we realize that we can change our experience of life by changing our thinking. Finally, Nguyen suggests that we are ever only one thought away from experiencing something different and transforming our entire lives. Chapter 3. Why do we even think? In Chapter 3 explores the nature and purpose of human thought. He suggests that our ability to rationalize, analyze, and think has evolved as a survival mechanism. Our minds are incredibly efficient at keeping us alive, but they do not necessarily help us thrive. They are primarily concerned with our safety and survival, not our fulfillment or joy. Nguyen explains that the mind's job is to alert us to potential dangers in our environment that may threaten our lives. It does this so effectively that it not only scans our immediate surroundings for threats but also references our backlog of past experiences to create hypothetical scenarios and predict future potential dangers based on our memories. However, Nguyen argues that this is not wrong. The mind is simply doing what it was designed to do. When we don't understand that its only duty is to help us survive, we can become angry and frustrated with it. He suggests that all conflict is derived from an innocent misunderstanding. Our mind's duty is to keep us alive, while our consciousness's duty is to help us feel fulfilled. Nguyen proposes that our soul is the reason why we're even on this journey in the first place, to find peace, love, and joy for ourselves. He suggests that while our minds have done an amazing job at what they were made to do, we may now relieve them of their job because we no longer live in the wild where death could be right around the corner in a bush. He warns that if we keep using our minds, we will constantly stay in a state of fight or flight, anxiety, fear, frustration, depression, anger, resentment, and all negative emotions because the mind thinks everything is a threat to our very existence. If we want to be free, happy, peaceful, and full of love, then we will need to let go of listening only to our mind and go beyond it by tuning into something much greater that will help us not just to survive, but to thrive. Nguyen uses the example of a person who is constantly thinking and analyzing, and as a result, has thought themselves out of happiness 1,000,000 times, but never once into it. He explains how our minds scan our immediate surroundings for threats and even reference our backlog of past experiences to create hypothetical scenarios and predict future potential dangers. Nguyen discusses how our minds are primarily concerned with our safety and survival, not our fulfillment or joy. He suggests that our soul is the reason why we're even on this journey in the first place, to find peace, love, and joy for ourselves. Finally, Nguyen warns that if we keep using our minds, we will constantly stay in a state of fight or flight, anxiety, fear, frustration, depression, anger, resentment, and all negative emotions. If we want to be free, happy, peaceful, and full of love, then we will need to let go of listening only to our mind and go beyond it by tuning into something much greater. Chapter 4, Thoughts versus Thinking. In Chapter 4 the author delves into the distinction between thoughts and thinking. He explains that thoughts are the energetic, mental raw materials from which we create everything in the world. Thoughts are not something that we do, but something we have. They take no effort or force on our end, and they just happen. We also cannot control what thoughts pop into our minds. The source of thoughts comes from something that is beyond our minds, the universe, if you will. On the other hand, thinking is the act of thinking about our thoughts. This takes a significant amount of energy, effort, and willpower. Thinking is actively engaging with the thoughts in our mind. You don't have to engage with each thought in your mind, but when you do, that is thinking. Thinking is the root cause of all our psychological suffering. Nguyen argues that positive thoughts, or thoughts that feel good, are not a result of thinking. They are, instead, generated by our natural state of peace, love, and joy. They are a byproduct of a state of being, not a state of thinking. Nguyen conducts a thought experiment where he asks the reader to think about the dream amount of money they want to be making a year. He then asks them to multiply that amount by 5 and observe their feelings when they think about this new dream goal for their income. He explains that the initial thought of how much money the reader wanted to make didn't cause any suffering until they began thinking about the thought of how much they wanted to make. Nguyen suggests that it is not necessary to think about our thoughts or to judge them. It does us no good to do so. We may think that thinking is helping us, but all it's really doing is causing us to feel all of these negative, unwanted emotions and making us create reasons as to why we can't do it or why we shouldn't want it. He argues that thoughts create, while thinking destroys. The reason thinking destroys is because as soon as we begin to think about the thoughts, we cast our own limiting beliefs, judgments, criticisms, programming, and conditioning onto the thought, thinking of infinite reasons as to why we can't do it and why we can't have it. Finally, Nguyen uses his feelings as an internal radar that tells him whether he's getting direct downloads of thoughts from the universe or if he's in his head thinking about his thoughts. He suggests that feelings and emotions are like an intuitive internal dashboard which tells him if he's thinking too much or not. Chapter 5. If we can only feel what we're thinking, don't we need to think positively to feel that way? Chapter 5 of the book explores the relationship between our thoughts and emotions. It argues that we can only feel negative emotions when we are thinking, and that our natural state of being is joy, love, ecstasy, freedom, and gratitude. Here's a summary of the key points. 1. Thoughts and negative emotions. The book suggests that negative emotions are a result of our thinking. This doesn't mean we should stop feeling negative emotions entirely, as they can be helpful in certain situations, such as feeling fear when walking down a dark alley alone. However, in most cases, these emotions are more unhelpful than helpful. 2. Positive thinking isn't necessary for positive emotions. The book challenges the common belief that we must think positively to feel positive emotions. It proposes that we can feel positive emotions without having to think positively. This is demonstrated through a thought experiment where readers are asked to recall a time when they felt the most joy and love. Many people realize that they didn't have any thoughts during that exact moment, suggesting that thoughts are not necessary to feel positive emotions. 3. Our natural state of being. The book asserts that our natural state of being is joy, love, and peace. This is illustrated by looking at the natural state of a baby, who is naturally in a state of bliss, happiness, and love, rather than stress, anxiety, fear, and self-consciousness. Therefore, any thinking we do will only take us away from these natural states of being. 4. The relationship between thinking and emotions. The book explains that the intensity of the negative emotion we feel is directly proportional to how much thinking we are doing in the moment. On the other hand, the intensity of the positive emotion we feel is inversely proportional to the amount of thinking we are doing in the moment. This means that the less thinking we have going on, the stronger the positive emotion we feel in the present. 5. The root cause of our suffering. The book concludes that it's not what we're thinking about that is causing us suffering, but that we are thinking. The intensity of the negative emotions is directly correlated to the amount of thinking we have going on in the present. The less thinking we have, the more space we create for positive emotions to naturally surface. Here are some real-world examples to illustrate these points. 1. Example of negative emotions. Imagine you're about to give a public speech. The more you think about it, the more nervous and anxious you become. But once you start speaking and stop thinking about it, the anxiety fades away. 2. Example of positive emotions without positive thinking. Think about a time when you were laughing uncontrollably with friends. In that moment, you probably weren't thinking about anything in particular, yet you were experiencing intense joy and happiness. 3. Example of our natural state of being. Consider a baby who is playing with a toy. The baby isn't thinking about anything, yet they are in a state of pure joy and curiosity. 4. Example of the relationship between thinking and emotions. Imagine you're lying on a beach on a sunny day. The less you think about your worries and responsibilities, the more relaxed and peaceful you feel. 5. Example of the root cause of our suffering. Consider a time when you were upset about something. The more you thought about it, the more upset you became. But once you stopped thinking about it, you started to feel better. This shows that it's not the content of our thinking, but the act of thinking itself, that often causes our suffering. In conclusion, the book suggests that to experience positive emotions, we don't need to think positive, but rather create space for these emotions to naturally surface by reducing the amount of thinking we do. This is a radical shift from the common belief that our thoughts control our emotions, and offers a new perspective on achieving emotional well-being. Chapter 6: How the Human Experience is Created, the 3 Principles. Chapter 6 of the book delves into the 3 principles that create the human experience: universal mind, consciousness, and thought. Here's a summary. 1. Universal mind. This principle refers to the intelligence behind all living things. It's the life force and energy present in everything, from an acorn growing into a tree to our bodies healing themselves. This intelligence, often referred to as God, infinite intelligence, the quantum field, or source, is where thoughts originate. When we're connected to the universal mind, we feel whole and fulfilled. However, when we start thinking and believing in illusions or ego, we block this flow and begin to feel negative emotions. 2. Universal consciousness. This principle is the collective consciousness of all things. It allows us to be aware of our existence and our thoughts. Without it, we wouldn't be able to experience anything, as our senses would have nothing to perceive. 3. Universal thought. This principle is the raw material of the universe, allowing us to think and create form from the energy of the universal mind. It's the object we perceive through consciousness. Without thought, we would have nothing to be aware of. Here are 5 real-world examples to illustrate these principles. 1. Acorn growing into a tree. This is an example of the universal mind. The acorn inherently knows how to grow into a tree without any external input, demonstrating the intelligence behind all living things. 2. Planets staying in orbit. This is another example of the universal mind. The planets naturally know how to stay in their orbits, showcasing the invisible force that governs all things. 3. Body healing a cut. When we get a cut, our body knows how to heal itself. This is an example of the universal mind at work within us. 4. Awareness of existence. Our ability to be aware that we exist, to think, and to perceive our surroundings is an example of universal consciousness. 5. Creating art. When we create a piece of art, we're using universal thought. We're taking the raw material of the universe, our thoughts, and creating form from the energy of the universal mind. In conclusion, understanding these 3 principles can help us alleviate suffering and create from source. It's not about what we're thinking, but the fact that we're thinking, that often causes our suffering. The less we think, the more we allow positive emotions to naturally surface. This is a radical shift from the common belief that our thoughts control our emotions and offers a new perspective on achieving emotional well-being. Chapter 7. If thinking is the root cause of our suffering, how do we stop thinking? Chapter 7 of the book explores the concept of thinking as the root cause of our suffering and provides insights on how to manage it. Here's a summary. 1. Thinking and suffering. The chapter begins with a Zen parable about a samurai who learns the nature of heaven and hell from a Zen master. The samurai realizes that his anger and resentment, products of his thinking, have created his own hell. When he understands this and lets go of his anger, he experiences heaven. This story illustrates that our thinking can create our suffering. 2. Reducing thinking. The book suggests that while it's not possible to stop thinking entirely, we can reduce the time we spend thinking. This reduction can eventually lead us to spend most of our day not caught up in our thinking, allowing us to live in a blissful state most of the time. 3. Awareness of thinking. The book emphasizes that the key to reducing thinking is simply to be aware of it. By becoming aware that we are thinking and that it is the root cause of our suffering, we automatically become conscious of it and allow it to settle and pass. 4. Thinking in quicksand. The book compares thinking to quicksand. The more we fight our thinking, the more it amplifies negative emotions and worsens our situation. The only way to break free from our thinking is to let go and trust that our natural inner wisdom will guide us back to clarity and peace. 5. Fluctuating between thinking and non-thinking. The book acknowledges that it's normal to fluctuate between thinking and non-thinking. We are spiritual, infinite beings having a physical, finite experience, and we will naturally oscillate between the two states of feeling anxious/stressed and joyful/peaceful. Here are 5 real-world examples to illustrate these points. 1. Example of thinking and suffering. Consider a situation where you're stuck in traffic and late for an important meeting. The more you think about the consequences of being late, the more stressed and anxious you become. Your thinking has created your own hell. 2. Example of reducing thinking. Imagine you're practicing meditation. As you focus on your breath and let go of your thoughts, you find your mind becoming quieter and your state more peaceful. 3. Example of awareness of thinking. Consider a time when you were worried about a problem. Once you became aware that your worry was just a product of your thinking, you were able to let it go and find a solution more easily. 4. Example of thinking in quicksand. Imagine you're trying to lose weight and keep thinking about how hard it is. The more you think about the difficulty, the more discouraged you become and the harder it seems. Just like with quicksand, the more you struggle with your thinking, the deeper you sink. 5. Example of fluctuating between thinking and non-thinking. Consider your experience on a roller coaster ride. One moment, you might be anxious thinking about the upcoming drop. The next moment, as you let go and enjoy the ride, you might feel a rush of joy and excitement. In conclusion, the chapter suggests that the key to alleviating our suffering is not to stop thinking entirely, but to reduce our thinking and become more aware of it. By doing so, we can experience more moments of joy, peace, and love, which are our natural state of being. Chapter 8. How we can possibly thrive in the world without thinking. Chapter 8 of the book explores the concept of thriving in the world without thinking. Here's a summary. 1. Thinking and performance. The chapter begins by asking the reader to reflect on what thoughts are going through their head when they're doing their best work. It suggests that when we're fully captivated and entranced by what we're doing, we're having no thoughts in the moment. This state of non-thinking is described as the state of peak performance for humans. 2. The zone and flow. The book discusses the concept of the zone, a state of flow or non-thinking that high-performing athletes often describe when they're in their peak state. In this state, athletes are not thinking or overanalyzing every single thing that's happening during the game. 3. Mushin. The book introduces the Japanese concept of mushin, which is achieved when the mind is free of random thoughts, anger, fear, and ego. It leaves the practitioner free to act and react without hesitation, relying on their trained, instinctive, subconscious reaction. 4. Thinking hinders performance. The book suggests that thinking hinders performance. We only hesitate, have doubts, insecurities, and fears when we begin thinking and overanalyzing. We function and perform our best and embody our full potential the moment we enter a state of non-thinking. 5. Non-thinking and creativity. The book concludes by suggesting that without thinking, we are free from the limitations of the ego and are able to create the most incredible things in the world. Here are 5 real-world examples to illustrate these points. 1. Example of thinking in performance. Consider a musician playing a complex piece of music. When they're fully engaged in the performance, they're not consciously thinking about each note they're playing. Instead, they're in a state of flow or non-thinking. 2. Example of the zone and flow. Think about a professional basketball player during a game. When they're in the zone, they're not overanalyzing every move. Instead, they're reacting instinctively to the game, demonstrating a state of flow or non-thinking. 3. Example of mushin. A martial artist in combat exemplifies the concept of mushin. They're not thinking about their next move but reacting instinctively based on their training. 4. Example of thinking hinders performance. Consider a student taking an exam. If they overthink each question, they may second-guess their answers and perform poorly. But if they trust their preparation and instinct, they're likely to perform better. 5. Example of non-thinking and creativity. An artist creating a painting is a good example of non-thinking and creativity. When they're fully immersed in their work, they're not consciously thinking about each brushstroke. Instead, they're in a state of flow, allowing their creativity to unfold naturally. In conclusion, the chapter suggests that the key to achieving peak performance and creativity is not to stop thinking entirely, but to enter a state of non-thinking or flow. This state allows us to be fully present and engaged in what we're doing, free from the limitations of the ego. Chapter 9. If we stop thinking, what do we do about our goals, dreams and ambitions? Chapter 9 of the book addresses the question of how to pursue our goals, dreams, and ambitions without getting caught up in overthinking. Here's a summary. 1. Thinking and suffering. The chapter begins with the author's realization that thinking was the root cause of all their suffering. This leads to questions about how to live life, pursue goals, dreams, and ambitions without thinking. 2. Goals from desperation versus inspiration. The author distinguishes between goals created out of desperation and those created out of inspiration. Goals created out of desperation come from a place of scarcity and urgency, often leading to feelings of stress and dissatisfaction. On the other hand, goals created out of inspiration come from a place of abundance and feel like a calling rather than an obligation. 3. Divine inspiration. The author introduces the concept of divine inspiration, which is a feeling of deep inspiration that comes not from us, but through us from something greater than us. This divine inspiration doesn't analyze or rely on past data, and it knows no boundaries, limits, or constraints. 4. The role of thinking in goal setting. The author suggests that thinking plays a significant role in how we set our goals. When we set goals out of desperation, we're often caught up in overthinking, which leads to feelings of lack and desperation. However, when we set goals out of inspiration, we're in a state of non-thinking, which allows us to create from a place of abundance. 5. The power of non-thinking. The author concludes by emphasizing the power of non-thinking. By reducing our thinking, we can create more space for positive emotions to naturally surface, leading to a state of peace, love, and fulfillment. Here are 5 real-world examples to illustrate these points. 1. Example of goals from desperation. Consider someone who sets a goal to lose weight because they feel insecure about their body. This goal is created out of desperation and can lead to stress and dissatisfaction. 2. Example of goals from inspiration. Think about an artist who creates a piece of art not because they want to sell it, but because they feel a deep desire to express themselves. This goal is created out of inspiration and comes from a place of abundance. 3. Example of divine inspiration. Consider the invention of the airplane. The Wright brothers didn't rely on past data or what was considered possible at the time. Their vision to create a flying machine came from a place of divine inspiration. 4. Example of thinking in goal setting. Imagine a student who sets a goal to get straight A's because they believe this will lead to success. The student might overthink and stress about their studies, leading to feelings of lack and desperation. 5. Example of non-thinking. Consider a musician who plays an instrument not because they want to become famous, but because they enjoy the process of creating music. They're in a state of non-thinking, allowing positive emotions to naturally surface. In conclusion, the chapter suggests that the key to pursuing our goals, dreams, and ambitions is not to stop thinking entirely, but to reduce our thinking and create goals out of inspiration rather than desperation. This approach allows us to experience more moments of joy, peace, and love, which are our natural state of being. Chapter 10. Unconditional Love and Creation. Chapter 10 explores the concepts of unconditional love and unconditional creation. The author shares his personal journey of understanding these concepts through his relationship with his girlfriend, McKenna. 1. Unconditional love. The author initially struggled to understand why McKenna couldn't list reasons for her love towards him, while he could easily list dozens for his love towards her. After introspection, he realized that if he loved her based on certain traits or actions, his love would be conditional. He understood that McKenna's love was unconditional, not based on his actions or moods, but an outpouring of abundant love from within herself. This realization led him to strive for the same kind of love, one that comes from an infinite internal source, unobstructed by overthinking. Example: the author questioned if he loved McKenna because of her laugh or her helpful nature. He realized that if she didn't laugh or help someone one day, it wouldn't mean he'd stop loving her. This led him to understand the concept of unconditional love. 2. Unconditional creation. The author explains that unconditional creation is the purest form of creation, born out of unconditional love. It is innovative, unique, and awe-inspiring. However, most people create conditionally, often to achieve a goal like making money. This conditional creation is stressful and unfulfilling as it's a means to an end, not an end in itself. Example: people often work to earn money, not for the sake of money itself, but for what it can provide. This is conditional creation as it's done for something else. The author argues that what we're ultimately seeking are feelings, which can only be generated from within, not from external things. When we create unconditionally, simply because we want to, we immediately feel all the positive feelings we desire. This is creation from abundance, leading to a state of flow, oneness, and a direct connection to the universe/God. Example: when we create something not for money, fame, or love, but simply because we want to, we step into the realm of living life unconditionally. This is when we experience flow, oneness, and a direct connection to the universe/God. Chapter 11. What do you do after experiencing peace, joy, love, and fulfillment in the present? This chapter discusses what to do after experiencing peace, joy, love, and fulfillment in the present. The author emphasizes the importance of non-thinking and how it leads to peace. However, this state can also lead to worry, anxiety, and doubt as it threatens the personal ego. The author provides guidance on how to navigate this stage and channel the freed-up energy towards goals of inspiration. 1. Non-thinking. The author encourages practicing non-thinking, which helps in experiencing peace. He explains that negative feelings arise from our thinking, and becoming aware of this fact can help settle the mind. Example: if you're about to step on a venomous snake, you'll freak out. But when you realize it's just a rope, you understand that your fear was caused by your thinking, not the object itself. 2. Threat to personal ego. Experiencing peace can lead to the death of the personal ego, causing feelings of worry, anxiety, and doubt. The ego, threatened by this state, tries to regain control, leading to these negative feelings. Example: after experiencing peace, you might feel worried or anxious as your ego tries to regain control. This is a normal part of the process of awakening. 3. Channeling energy. Most people spend a lot of energy thinking, which is freed up when they stop thinking. This energy can be channeled into goals of inspiration, preventing it from going back into overthinking. Example: if you used to spend a lot of energy thinking and now have stopped, you can channel this newfound energy into your goals of inspiration. 4. Goals of inspiration. The author advises creating goals out of inspiration rather than desperation. Channeling energy towards these goals can help maintain the state of peace. Example: if you have goals of desperation in your mind, directing energy towards them will only perpetuate thinking and negative feelings. Instead, create goals out of inspiration and direct your energy towards them. 5. Activation ritual. An activation ritual, or a morning routine, can help build momentum in a positive direction and make it easier to stay in a state of non-thinking throughout the day. Example: spiritual masters and great leaders often have a morning routine. This helps them get into a state of non-thinking and flow, building positive momentum for the rest of the day. Chapter 12. Nothing is either good or bad. This chapter delves into the concept that nothing is inherently good or bad, and it's our thinking that categorizes things as such. The author uses various examples to illustrate this idea and provides guidance on how to navigate through negative emotions. 1. Piano analogy. The author compares life to a piano with 88 keys. Just as there are no wrong keys on a piano, only keys that sound more or less pleasant when played consecutively, there are no wrong decisions in life. It's our thinking that labels decisions as good or bad. Example: on a piano, we don't label a key as wrong unless it's played incorrectly in a song. Similarly, in life, decisions aren't inherently wrong, it's our thinking that labels them as such. 2. Political parties. The author suggests that if we view different political parties as we do different keys on a piano, without labeling them as wrong or bad, we can experience love, joy, and peace in the moment. Example, if we believe opposing political parties are wrong or bad, it can cause negative emotions. But if we view them as different keys on a piano, with no inherently wrong parties, we can experience positive emotions. 3. Mountain hiking. The author uses the analogy of hiking on a mountain to explain that there are no wrong spots to stop and enjoy the view. By being open to all possible spots, we can see the view from different vantage points. Example, when hiking, there are no wrong spots to stop and take in the view. By being open to all possible spots, we can enjoy different perspectives of the scenery. 4. Seeking truth. The author advises looking for universal truth instead of categorizing things as right or wrong, good or bad. Universal truth is not subjective and is true for every conscious human being on the planet. Example, instead of trying to prove we are right and others are wrong, we should look for the universal truth that is true for every conscious human being, regardless of who they are or where they're from. 5. Negative emotions. The author explains that negative emotions are an indication of misunderstanding and are caused by our thinking. By becoming aware of this, we can welcome these feelings with love and return to our natural state of peace, love, and joy. Example, when gripped by negative emotions, it means we believe what we are thinking. By remembering that thinking is the root cause of how we're feeling, we can welcome these feelings with love and return to our natural state of peace, love, and joy. Chapter 13. How do you know what to do without thinking? Chapter 13 discusses how to make decisions without overthinking. The author emphasizes the importance of intuition and inner wisdom, and provides guidance on how to navigate through fear and self-doubt. 1. No right or wrong. The author compares life to a piano with no wrong keys, only keys that sound more or less pleasant depending on the context. Similarly, there are no right or wrong decisions in life, only decisions that lead to more or less pleasant outcomes. Example, just like there are no wrong keys on a piano, there are no wrong decisions in life. It's our thinking that labels decisions as good or bad. 2. Intuition and inner wisdom. The author suggests that most of the time, we already know deep down what to do in any specific situation. This is often referred to as your gut feeling, intuition, or inner wisdom. Example, if we want to lose weight, most of us know exactly what we need to do. The formula to losing weight isn't rocket science. Most of us know that all we need to do is burn more calories than we consume, work out, and eat healthy foods. 3. Inner GPS. The author describes intuition as a real-time inner GPS that will guide you to where you need to go and what you should do at any moment in time. Example, your intuition will always lead you to where you need to go and what you should do at any moment in time. It's like a real-time inner GPS that will tell you when to take a detour and which path you should take if there is a blockage in the road to your destination. 4. Avoid looking externally for answers. The author advises against looking externally for confirmation on what you know to be true for you. Instead, follow your intuition, your gut feeling, your inner wisdom, and the universe/God. Example, if you try to look outside for confirmation on what you know to be true for you, you'll almost always get backlash and differing opinions on what next steps you should take. Avoid looking externally for answers. Follow your intuition, your gut feeling, your inner wisdom, and the universe/God. 5. Fear or self-doubt. The author explains that most of us know what to do, but we are just afraid to do it. The first step is realizing that you already know what to do, you just think you don't because of fear or self-doubt. Example, for anything in life, you most likely already know deep down what to do, but are afraid of doing it or don't believe that you are good enough to do it. The first step is realizing that you already know what to do, you just think you don't because of fear or self-doubt. The end. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like and share. See you in next videos.